Tonight, a fourth group of Israeli hostages has been released by Hamas. 11 people now en route back to Israel. It comes as Israel and Hamas agreed to extend their ceasefire for 2 more days. Reunions continue to be made in the Middle East, including this former Palestinian detainee who was released from an Israeli prison and delivered to his family in Gaza. NBC's Alice Barr live at the White House with more on this truce extension. Alice, it's great to see you. So could this be a strong sign that this fighting just might be cooling off here?
Faith, there are a lot of people that are hoping that is the case, and certainly any extension that relieves any of the suffering ongoing in Gaza, allows more humanitarian aid in, and allows more hostages critically to come out is welcomed by anyone who is watching this. But it's important to note that we have heard, particularly from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, repeated statements and promises, really, that as soon as this temporary truce concludes, that the war will continue. He has continued to say that Israel is dedicated to destroying Hamas, and at this stage, I think it would be too soon to hope that this extension means that we're not in for more fighting. But it's also possible that this extension could continue, because what sort of was laid out at the very beginning is that Israel had agreed to allow for 1 more day of a pause in fighting for every 10 hostages that Hamas agrees to release. And we know there were some 240 originally, so there are a lot more that are still being held captive, and a lot could potentially be worked out if there's sort of a slow extension of this truce to allow for these hostages to come out.
So, Alice, this weekend we saw tensions turn deadly. 3 college students of Palestinian descent were shot in Vermont. Today, a suspect was arraigned. And of course, we've been seeing acts like this across the country. We've seen violence against Palestinians, and we've also seen violence against Israelis. How are acts like these being seen in Washington?
Yeah, it's really a terrible act. And there was a press conference, a White House press briefing just a little bit earlier this afternoon, and this was a very large part of the discussion today. Certainly the White House said that while they're still waiting for more facts, this is being investigated by the FBI and the ATF as a possible hate crime. So they're being careful about how they're speaking about it while it's still under investigation. That clearly there is no room for hate in America. There's a lot of effort to try to crack down on Islamophobia, anti-Semitism that we have just seen surge, both types of hate, incidents of both types of hate since the beginning of this war.
And Alice, over the weekend, President Biden said he hopes that this pause can continue. So what kind of actions are the White House looking at to help in moderating some sort of permanent peace?
So the White House has been clear that ultimately they see that there needs to be a 2-state solution of Palestinians and Israelis both having their own state. President Biden has spoken numerous times that that's the way that the only way he really sees this conflict actually being resolved. He has begun to speak a little bit about potentially putting some conditions on aid to Israel. And that would be another leverage point to try to get some of what the White House has been pressing for, particularly more aid into Gaza, things like that, more relief for civilians in Gaza. That there could be potentially a world where the White House might start really exerting some pressure in concrete ways like that. Back to you.
Alice Barr in Washington, thank you so much.